The NewsHour Special Edition.
Ladies and gentlemen, a highly anticipated summit between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin ended without any agreement to halt or resolve the ongoing war. While both leaders described these talks as productive, there was no breakthrough or commitment on the central issue of the conflict. Trump claimed great progress had been made, stating that many points were agreed upon, though a few remain unresolved. He, however, claimed that there's no deal until there is a deal.
I believe we had a very productive meeting. There were many points that we agreed on, most of them, I would say, a couple of big ones that we haven't quite gotten there, but we've made some headway. So there's no deal until there's a deal. I will call up NATO in a little while. I will call up the various people that I think are appropriate, and I'll, of course, call up President Zelenskyy and tell him about today's meeting. It's ultimately up to them. They're going to have to agree with what Marco and Steve and some of the great people from the Trump administration who've come here, Scott and John Ratcliffe, thank you very much. But we have some of our really great leaders. They've been doing a phenomenal job. We also have some tremendous Russian business representatives here, and I think, you know, everybody wants to deal with us. We've become the hottest country anywhere in the world in a very short period of time, and we look forward to that. We look forward to dealing. We're going to try and get this over with.
Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin has praised his recent talks with Trump, describing them as constructive and saying that the two leaders have reached an understanding. Putin also reaffirmed Donald Trump's long-standing claim that the war in Ukraine would not have started if Donald Trump had remained in office, saying that the conflict escalated during the Biden administration. He in fact alleged that he had warned Biden about the risks of escalation prior to the outbreak of the hostilities.
I'd like to remind you that in 2022, during the last contact with the previous administration, I tried to convince my previous American colleague that the situation should not be brought to the point of no return when it would come to hostilities. And I said it quite directly back then that it's a big mistake. Today, when President Trump saying that if he was the president back then, there will be no war. And I'm quite sure that it would indeed be so. I can confirm that. I think that overall, me and President Trump have built a very good, businesslike and trustworthy contact. And I have every reason to believe that moving down this path, we can come, and the sooner the better, to the end of the conflict in Ukraine.
Now, talking of the key takeaways from this meeting, while no ceasefire was agreed upon, the Alaska talks saw significant progress. Vladimir Putin also expressed interest in ending the war and suggested that the next meeting could be held in Moscow. But what grabbed eyeballs was how Russian President Vladimir Putin received an unusually warm welcome as he arrived on American soil. The visit began with a grand reception, a firm handshake, smiles, and even a ride in the presidential limousine. American F-35 fighter jets and a B-2 stealth bomber conducted a flypast to mark Putin's arrival. Donald Trump has posted on Truth Social that he held calls with Zelenskyy and other European leaders as well. In fact, Zelenskyy is now scheduled to meet with Trump at the White House on Monday next. Donald Trump said that instead of a ceasefire, the focus should be on achieving a peace agreement. Taking to social media platform X, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, the Ukrainian president, expressed his desire for what he calls real peace and said that the killings must end immediately. He added that during his phone call with Trump, he called for tougher sanctions on Putin. Meanwhile, how has India reacted? Well, India's External Affairs Ministry has issued a statement welcoming the Alaska dialogue, calling the pursuit of peace commendable and appreciating the progress made at the summit. The statement also reiterated that dialogue and diplomacy remain the best way forward. Now, India, remember, has been keeping a close watch on the Trump-Putin summit in Alaska, with Washington slapping an additional 25% tariff on India over its Russian oil imports. The deadline for that levy is 27th of August. Now, a deal to end the Russia-Ukraine war could have brought respite, but while no breakthrough came through the talks, it sparked cautious optimism with signs of some progress. It appears Vladimir Putin may have inadvertently exposed Trump's hypocrisy as well. Speaking at the joint press conference, Putin claimed that since Donald Trump took office, bilateral trade between the two superpowers has grown by nearly 20%. He also added that the US-Russia ties hold tremendous potential. The irony, of course, is that while Washington pressurizes India to curb Russian oil purchases, it continues trading with Moscow without hesitation.
Incidentally, when the new administration came to power, bilateral trade started to grow. It's still very symbolic. Still, we have a growth of 20%. As I've said, we have a lot of dimensions for joint work. It is clear that the U.S. and Russian investment and business cooperation has tremendous potential. Russia and the U.S. can offer each other so much in trade, digital, high-tech, and in space exploration.
All right, let me welcome my guest this evening. Tara Kharta, former Director, National Security Council, joins us. Dr. Jeffrey Gunter, former American Ambassador, also joins us, as well as Ben Aris, founder and editor-in-chief, BNE, former bureau chief for Daily Telegraph in Moscow, joining us this evening. Good evening and namaskar to all of you. Thanks very much for sparing the time to join us and share your perspective. First of all, Dr. Gunter, to you, what do you make of the Alaska summit? There has been, of course, a lot of expectation, a lot of focus on it. But for you, was it on expected lines that this will only be the groundwork for the subsequent meetings that we see and not really a meeting where a ceasefire or a peace agreement could have been announced?
I think it was a fantastic win. All of us in diplomacy knows that so much of it has to do with optics, and the other half has to do with relationships. And if you look at the Trump-Putin Alaska summit, the optics were phenomenal, especially the ride in the Beast. Whoever thought that we would see Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump sitting in the Beast and taking a ride together while they spoke English and strengthened their relationship? So without a doubt, this was a great, great, great summit. It was a winner. It's a great example of Trump diplomacy, the same diplomacy that has been creating peace around the world. If you don't agree with me, go look at the Congo and Rwanda. Look at Armenia and Azerbaijan. Look at the peace that we see breaking out around the world, because really, this is the new Trump diplomacy. And just like President Trump invented or introduced everyone to X and the importance of Twitter and truth on social media. And remember, 10 years ago, we're going, oh, if only President Trump could stop tweeting. Well, let me tell you, he's rewriting the book on diplomacy now. He's showing the importance of optics, the importance of relationships. And he says, hey, let's see if we can get this together. We're all cautiously optimistic. And remember, if a deal's not done, a deal's not done. And President Trump isn't going to say a deal is done until a deal is done. But there was a lot of bilateral great conversation and diplomacy, and the beneficiaries will be countries around the world, not only Ukraine and Russia.
Okay. I absolutely agree with the optics part of what you're saying, the fact that there has been a red carpet that was rolled out for the Russian president, the fact that Putin is on American soil 10 years later. There were smiles, there were handshakes, all of that into, play. I absolutely agree with you. But as far as strategy is concerned, Tara Kharta, do you think Donald Trump has a strategy going forward, considering the fact that he posted after the summit, changing his stance really, saying that, not a ceasefire agreement, but a direct peace agreement? So far, he was only talking about a ceasefire. Today, he talked about a peace agreement. Many are saying that he doesn't have a strategy and the entire focus is only on the Nobel Peace Prize.
No, actually, in actual fact, as a negotiator in the past, I would also say a peace deal is better than a ceasefire. Ceasefires get broken all the time. 24 hours down the line, the damn thing has gone down the drain. So in principle, I do agree with what he said. I also like the fact that President Trump said right at the beginning that NATO should never have done what it did to expand it to cross Russia's red lines. And all of us were saying that. And then they went and did it anyway. And you've got hundreds of lives lost. So on principle, if he can end this war, I think it's a terrific thing. And I would, with all my heart, would wish him a Nobel Peace Prize, provided he doesn't drag India into this. That I certainly don't like. I mean, it is a height of hypocrisy to say that India has to, have this whole 25% tariff, whereas the European Union buys all its gas from Russia, and like you said, the trade with Russia and US has gone up. That part is definitely not on. But the fact that it seems to me that India had a role to play in this whole thing, because that message of 25% came a day before our NSA arrived in Moscow. So I think there was that push to get our NSA also to talk to them, to get this thing going. And India, for our own interests, wants the war to end. That is good for us because for multiple reasons which I won't go into now. So there is actually a convergence of interests here. So let's hope this works out.
Okay, Ben Aris, what do you make of this? This has been, of course, extremely crucial for Russia, Vladimir Putin in America. What do you think has been the biggest takeaway from the summit?
Well, there's been some breaking news in the last hour. The FT, Chris Miller, who's extremely well connected to Bankova in Kiev, has been reporting that Putin has been demanding that Ukraine give up the whole of the Donbass. It took control of Lugansk, the northern territory, in July, but only partially controls Donetsk, the second one down, the other part of the Donbass. But he also suggested that he would freeze the line of contact in the other two regions that Russia occupies, in Kherson and Zaporizhzhia. And that is a concession by Putin to freeze the line and not ask for the whole of the two regions he doesn't occupy in the south, before he's been insisting on control of all of them. But it does leave Russia in control of a couple of hundred kilometers in from the coast. In other words, the land bridge that connects Rostov in Russia down to the Crimea remains in place, which of course is his goal. I mean, he wants to keep that territory forever. And this is actually a blow to Ukraine. I mean, the Bankova was fearing that going into this, that Trump and Putin would cook up some sort of deal. Trump talked about land swaps. I mean, in this deal that they're proposing now, there is no swap. I mean, Ukraine hasn't got any land that Russia wants to give back. And Zelenskyy has said adamantly that he's not going to give up any territory whatsoever. And so it appears now that Zelenskyy is going to travel to Washington tomorrow, and he's going to be presented with this deal that Trump has agreed with Putin, that he should give up basically control of all of the Donbass and half of the two other regions, with something that Zelenskyy said he won't do. The difference is that in April, when this deal was first proposed in London by Trump, his final offer, that Trump presented it as his deal. This time, walking out of the press conference, he made it very clear that the U.S. is not involved in this deal, that it's purely Zelenskyy's decision, and that Trump is not pushing it on him per se. But everybody on the Ukrainian side were hoping that Trump would come out with these heavy 100% duty tariffs on Russia, that he would sanction India and China in particular for continuing to buy Russian oil. And none of that's appeared. In fact, the August 8th deadline to impose those sanctions has disappeared. And moreover, Trump has said explicitly now that he won't put those tariffs on China. And as my colleague was saying, there's a 25% on India. So this is going to be a very difficult meeting, I think, for Zelenskyy tomorrow in Washington. He's going to be presented with a deal that he's actually rejected already. And I think Trump's going to push him and say, like, either you do this or we're out of the game.
Yeah. While Zelenskyy makes his way to Washington, D.C., and he's going to be reaching the Oval Office on Monday, let me quickly get in a reaction that has come in from UK's Prime Minister. Keir Starmer, ladies and gentlemen, has put out a statement, and he, in fact, has welcomed the progress that was made despite the Alaska summit ending without a ceasefire deal. He said President Trump's efforts have brought us closer than ever before to ending Russia's illegal war in Ukraine. His leadership in pursuit of an end to the killing should be commended. That was what Keir Starmer has put out, also saying that while progress has been made, the next step must be further talks involving President Zelenskyy. And that, of course, is going to be happening on Monday. Ambassador, I want to understand from you what you expect in these talks, Zelensky's talks with Donald Trump. The last time around, we saw Volodymyr Zelensky travel to the White House. There were fireworks. There was a lot of dramatic, imagery and scenes that came out of the White House. But this time around, what are you expecting? There is, of course, that entire peace process that has to be chalked out for the near future.
Absolutely. I mean, that was then and now is now. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over again and expecting a different result. Quite honestly, Zelensky can't afford to have the same result that he had last time in the mud fight in the Oval Office. So this time you will see a whole different disposition. You will see that President Trump brilliantly triangulated Zelensky with Vladimir Putin. So he will be well behaved, he will be a diplomat, and he might not like our esteemed guest just said, the position that he's in, but clutching his pearls, he better wake up and realize that really he has a lot on the line here. And President Trump brought a tremendous team in Witkoff and Rubio and our great Secretary of Treasury. So really the pressure is on Zelensky now to make a deal. And this is the art of the diplomacy deal delivered by President Trump. And I think the whole world, like you smartly said, can celebrate in the comments from the UK that we are on the verge of a big breakthrough. But like the president says, until a deal is made, he won't say it. Maybe he'll say 50-50, but there's some great stuff in the works.
But Tara, these talks have involved a lot. There's a lot at stake. There is, of course, that territorial dispute that is sustaining. There are critical minerals. There are businesses that want to be involved and get this through, this entire peace deal done. But as far as, the peace agreement being reached is concerned, do you think the conditions that are U.S. plus Russia will dominate Ukraine's interest and Ukraine's demands?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm being very blunt here. I'm sorry, I'm not in
Absolutely.
diplomacy. But, for Zelensky, it's a bit of a difficult position. If the war ends, his position may end with it. If the war doesn't end, then he goes back with nothing. So I wouldn't like to be in Zelensky's place. But any possibility of Russia giving back the Donbas is out of the question. The corridor to Crimea, which was, I think, the whole point of the exercise to begin with, he's not going to give that up. And I think in some ways, and I might be out of line here, but if a secure Russia is in Ukraine's interest, a secure Crimea has been historically a problem in terms of Russian peace. You have to understand that, and no one should understand it more than Europe, which is probably why the Europeans couldn't get a common statement together after the meeting, Alaska. It's not a common statement. There's so much of differing opinions within Europe. There are differing problems. I mean, look at Germany. They have a power crisis because of Russia, this Russian-Ukraine war. So there's a lot of stuff at stake here. All of us are in grief. So, well, Zelensky will just have to take it on the chin.
Well, let's wait and watch what happens on Monday. Hopefully, we will see some forward movement after Zelensky's talks with Donald Trump. And well, if Donald Trump is able to achieve the peace, Hillary Clinton will have to walk the talk, and she will have to go by her promise of nominating the president for Nobel Peace Prize. I'll wrap it up here. Thank you very much to all of you, Ben, Ambassador, as well as Tara. Thanks very much to all three of you for sharing your perspective on this crucial Alaska summit and, of course, the way forward.